and comments, etc. Um, we're also live on YouTube and we're live on E360 TV. So you can catch us all over the place right now. But today we're going to talk about minor shift, actually. Many of you out there probably saw we were going to have Paul Diamond back again to talk about very specifically get into diving into symbolism and the things that revolve around coming out of a journey. So we're rescheduling that. Paul is a little under the weather, so we're rescheduling that, and we'll have that coming back here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll keep you posted on that. So today we pivoted, and we're going into managing wellness. Both of us feeling very strongly about this time. Obviously, we're in a place where there's a lot going on with depending on your viewpoint, depending on your perspective, whether there's a virus, whether there's not a virus. None of that really matters. What matters is here we are. What matters is there is a lot going on, and it has a lot to do with our health and our wellness. And so we thought, let's dive into that. Let's dive into some of these alternative perspectives that we might be able to incorporate about why this virus is here, and but it speaks to such a larger what a horrible English, speaks to a much greater perspective of how we have demonized processes of change in our experience. And this relates to a podcast we did a couple of weeks ago about change. But we demonize the process of change. So when things come up to stimulate change, we attack it, we go after it. And what we've been discovering in our own investigations and our own explorations is there's some alternative perspectives that I think are even more powerful and more applicable to what we're experiencing right now. Any thoughts on that today, Jeff, to start us off?
Well, yes. If we could.
Here's the bomb. Take it.
I'd like to perhaps put this in the context that we've talked previously about what reality is what is. And without that being too cliche, when we argue with reality, we're telling the universe that what is shouldn't be here, as if there's a mistake or as if there is some problem that the creator, whatever that is, in your worldview or universal view, is out of control and things are all amiss and there's a problem. And the universe actually isn't seeing any of this as a problem. It's the entire experience we're having is about creating change. So the virus is a change agent, and it's here. It's supposed to be here. And how do we know it's supposed to be here? Because it is. It really is just that simple. And the more people try to pretend it should not be, or it's, whether it was man-made, whether it was, nature-made, whether it was passed from an animal domain, none of that even really matters in terms of if you understand, if we knew exactly what the origin of it is, it doesn't have any bearing on whether it's here or not. It's here. It does seem to be a thing. I personally don't have any experience with it. I don't know anybody personally that has been affected or died from it. Doesn't mean that hasn't happened somewhere. I just simply don't have any personal experience with it. So I really can't talk about it from that particular perspective. So anyway, those were my thoughts regarding putting some context around it, that let's not be those who are arguing with reality and somehow think that it should not be here, because it is here. So what are we going to do with it? How are we going to live with it and move forward with it?
Yeah, very well said. I like that. The idea of alternative perspectives here is not about burying your head in the sand and pretending nothing's happening, and it's about burying your head in the sand and pretending nothing's happening. I say that because that's the paradox that we live in. So much of what we're experiencing, for me, like you, Jeff, I have no direct contact with anyone who has been sick or died from COVID, which in and of itself is what it is. I mean, I don't know that I think much of it one way or the other. But the thing that's so powerful to me are some of the perspectives that we're getting to see now that enable us to hold this in a different light. I think we're so used to, as at least as members of the United States looking for ways to have conflict and looking for ways to fight perspectives and looking for ways to have, I don't know, I'm trying to find the right words here to, we don't focus in wellness. We don't focus in positive. We don't focus in alternative perspectives that could be helpful. We tend to battle about the minutia. We tend to battle about, at least that's what we're presented by via the media and television and news, and all of that stuff sort of sends the same message. But I don't want to dwell there. I want to talk about it from the perspective of these alternative perspectives. So one of those perspectives talks about this idea of this virus showing up in our experience as a creation of our own lack of self-love, as our own lack of, and I'm paraphrasing my understanding, so Jeff, I'm sure you'll help fine-tune this, but an expression of humanity's inability to treat each other as human, humanity's inability to treat each other with love and respect and to honor all humans, not specific humans. And we've spent hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, culling and fine-tuning and trying to, and not in a good way. I'm saying culling and fine-tuning from a negative perspective, from this idea of how do I control people and manage people, and who are the better people and who are the lesser people, and who gets managed and who doesn't get managed, and who wants money, and it just goes on and on. And so reframing this experience gives us the opportunity to say, wow, I can change my personal experience. And by changing my personal experience, that can evolve into something much greater.
Yes, I'm mindful once again regarding some things we've stated in previous podcasts that might also help to give some context to what you were just stating in terms of how humans are treating each other and have treated each other. There was a time on this planet before the notion of property became in our consciousness that no one looked at any piece of land or any object as something that they actually owned and weren't willing to share with their clan, their tribe, their peeps, their posse, whatever context you want to put all that in. And then at some point in human history, generally it's believed somewhere along some fertile valley near some river, somebody said, wow, we don't have to hunt meat so much any longer. We can grow vegetables, and this would be a really cool place to do it. So let's call this camp, let's call this home, and now we're going to guard it. And we're going to say it's ours. And other people that come along here, we don't want them to settle or stay, or we don't want to share this piece of property with them. And that's that happened a long time ago. And ever since then, we have lost this notion of we're all one, we're all part of the same family, regardless of what race or color or any other differences may show up in small, subtle ways. We no longer really think of each other as brothers and sisters. So the virus perhaps is going to help us reorient to that, because this is something that is affecting the entire planet. We're all in this. I'm not aware of any particular country or group of people who somehow got an exempt pass from having to deal with all of this. So we're hoping that is one of the outcomes from what we're all going through, is that there would be more of a universal awareness of how where we go one, we go all, or just this notion of we are a family. So.
Yeah, good stuff. And that's one perspective. Another very powerful perspective, and they all sort of relate to each other, but they're a little bit different in tone. Another perspective, reframing possibility, is this idea of the microbiome. This is not new information, but it's becoming more and more online as far as being paid attention to, how our bodies and our whole system, everything about us is a complex organism of bacteria and viruses and parasites, and we were listening to a video the other day, and again yesterday, because it was so fascinating to me. What was his name? What was his name?
I don't recall, Jim. I'll have to look it up.
I'll have to look it up, so I'm looking it up. I just sent it. Zach, Zach something. Sorry, I'll get to it.
I don't think his last name was something, but close.
No, Dr. Zach Bush, who is quite an extraordinary guy, huge history, but he talks about the microbiome and how this this virus is just is simply the biome finding its balance that we have as a species become so unhealthy. And so what they're finding is that in places where life is generally more unhealthy, more people are sick and dying. Shocker. But uh, but taking that to another level, so they're saying like the Wuhan province where this apparently started, the levels of pollution and, and lack of good health and age, I guess, is another issue. But these things have a very powerful impact. Uh, but because of the nature, so like New York City, the places that are hitting major hotspots and the areas that are hitting major hotspots apparently have a lot to do with the density of pollution, in addition to being close together and poor habits. And so there's this whole kind of other reframing of this, that this is just the biome trying to readjust itself, and that the dying process is also part of that shift. It occurs every year in our human experience. We go through the process of spring and awakening and summer and growth and fall as things go quiet and winter as things die. So it's a natural part of the process. Again, not anything to demonize, just something to another perspective that can take the stress out of this process a little bit. You know, it's not it's not a scepter that's hanging over our heads. It's an opportunity. We can choose how we want to step into that opportunity. So another perspective. Did you get a chance, Jeff, or did you get to experience him at all, or any of that
I
process?
did. I did. That was a fascinating perspective. Yes,
Yeah.
it made me mindful of. I can't remember what particular class it was, but it was a decade or more ago, probably closer to 2 decades ago. Uh, the This course I was taking was helping us understand the ecosystem in totality, in particular with regard to mountain lions and wolves. And they were using Yellowstone Park as an example, where ranchers, for the most part, decimated the wolf packs, as they weren't, imagine the wolves weren't really compliant with leaving the cattle alone and leaving the sheep alone, that the ranchers were trying to introduce into those areas and thought that, we can do this. So they killed a great number of the wolves, as well as the mountain lions. And what was really fascinating is that with the eradication of those, what we would call apex predators, trees, I mean, it affected a mountainous area that was full of trees and full of life, and it became more meadows and very sparse and almost deserty based on the animals that weren't there. And as soon as you start taking out certain large populations you create an imbalance, and it literally changed the topography of the entire area. And as they reintroduced the wolves and the mountain lions back again, then over a period of decades, the flora and the fauna began to come back to what was considered to be more indigenous to that area. So just really absolutely fascinating that when we start messing with something, it really has a big effect down the road. So to a healthy, a healthy herd of buffalo in Yellowstone, or a healthy herd of deer or elk, they actually need a wolf pack to keep it strong. To keep the herd strong, the wolves and the apex predators will take down the weak, they'll take down the aged, they'll take down the sick, naturally, just naturally. And the herd, in order to stay strong, needs that cleaning agent, if you will look at it that way, as it's vital to the health of the herd. So we're seeing the same thing with the viruses. It's actually vital to the health of the herd in general. And we're hearing that terminology creep in now, in certain newscasts and different ways of talking about what's happening is, strengthening the herd or strengthening the immunity of the herd.
The herd immunity. Yeah. Yep, they're using that a lot. That's become the buzz phrase lately. Through that. So these perspectives, guys. Again, I want to ask a question here. In thinking about these ideas and thinking about these possibilities, we presented a couple alternatives to how this may be. And many of it, all of it feels really positive, but it also feels really kind of, for lack of a better word, feels right in that it speaks to what we really are about. I know for me, and Jeff, you can speak to this of your own experience, but for me, the last 2 years has been a remarkable journey because I have been experiencing in my own process this unveiling of sort of the underpinnings of how we have created what we have created. Everything from government to laws to regulations to body to health to there's so many things that are structured within our culture. And I've struggled a lot, particularly the last year, because in my mind I would observe different, like the amount of cars being produced, the amount of homes being built. I was living in San Diego and they were building like crazy, and then I come to Denver and they're building like crazy, and I think to myself, this is not sustainable. How is this sustainable? It's so out of kilter. Our whole system is out of kilter from the obsessive, compulsive need to take people's money and to manage people via their money, and capitalism the way it is existing now, the be all end all of everything. We're willing to sacrifice people in order for a monetary system to function, because that's more important than the people. So there's a little bit of a balance issue that I see going on, in the experience of just universally. I don't know. I can't speak to other countries. Other countries approach things differently. They have a different set and a different basis from which to operate their culture. But in our culture, it's not healthy. So we want to transition here into talking about now. Wellness is about this. I want to keep this body here. I want to be here and engaged on the planet. And I don't say that from a perspective of, oh my God, there's a disease and I'm going to die. I'm just saying that's my desire. I want to be here. I want to participate. I want to engage. So if I'm going to do that, then I guess I need to figure out how I'm going to be responsible for this thing. How am I going to be responsible for this body in this current environment, and engage with my body instead of engaging with all the nonsense on the outside that isn't serving anything and isn't answering any questions? Any thoughts on
It's
that?
absolutely. First and foremost, I won't speak for Jim, but I believe we're in alignment that we would like to promote an accountability and a responsibility at a personal level for our health and wellness, and to um, not outsource that to uh, other professions, or even a government, or even a community system that's saying, oh, this is what you should do right now to deal with this. Because quite honestly, who could be the subject matter expert when nobody was alive the last time anything like this showed up on the planet? Nobody literally that's here today was alive then that has any personal experience of what to learn from it, how to interact with it. But most importantly, as we stated a little bit earlier, we've gotten to a place in human history where people are very, very sick, living very, very unhealthy, unsustainable lives. And if it weren't for what we would call the advances in modern medicine, most of the people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they would be dead already if we didn't have certain vaccines and certain medications and certain life sustaining uh, ways of prolonging life. But it's like, are these people really happy? Are these old people that have oxygen bottles near them, or they're in wheelchairs, or they're using walkers, um, because they've eaten so many foods polluted with all of the ingredients that weren't part of nature, that they're preservatives or additives or whatever? And we drink too much alcohol, smoke too much tobacco products, just in general. I'm not saying all of
Mhm.
the people listening right now. There's probably, and the people listening to this show are probably per capita better at taking care of themselves than the, say, average Costco shopper. But for the most part, we have outsourced our health and wellness to the news media, to doctors, nutritionists, advertisers. Take this pill, go get this treatment. But people are not growing their own food. They're not responsible for knowing where their water comes from, or even, I run into this all the time, Jim, that people that are using reverse osmosis systems, because like everybody has one, don't realize that that water is literally taking vitamins and minerals out of your body because water is a sponge and it attracts minerals and vitamins, and RO water, reverse osmosis water, is deplete of all of those. When it goes through the filtration system, it removes everything. And so, even the simple thing like us not drinking water that has vitamins and minerals in it, you do that for a decade or two, and you're going to create some significant health problems. And it's like, it just fascinates me that most people don't want to know that information. It's like, we want the simplicity. We still want to cook our food in a microwave. We want to wrap it in plastic, all these modern conveniences that we have that little by little by little, none of them by themselves will probably kill you. But my goodness, if you add them all up, it's going to make your years toward the end of your life, there's going to be a cost to pay because of our unwillingness to put our hands in the dirt, to deal. You stay there a couple of decades and it's going to